The key broke off in the lock. I stood there on my own front porch, holding a jagged piece of metal that should have opened my door. Behind me, my suitcases sat melting in the Arizona heat. 107 degrees. I'd just spent 12 hours traveling from Alaska. I was still smiling from the trip of a lifetime when a complete stranger opened my door. "Can I help you?" he asked. My door. My house. The home I'd owned for 15 years. "I live here," I said. "I'm Barbara Mitchell." The man's face shifted from suspicion to something that looked like pity. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "we bought this house 3 weeks ago. My daughter had sold my home while I was gone, forged my signature, destroyed everything to pay off her gambling addict husband's debts. When I called her, I heard my son-in-law laughing in the background. 'You're homeless now, old woman,' she said. Those were her exact words. Her voice was cold, distant, like I was a problem she'd finally solved. The police arrived within minutes. They were professional, sympathetic, but the documentation the stranger showed them was crystal clear. Sale completed 3 weeks ago. New deed filed with the county. Everything legal and proper, at least on paper, but I smiled. Standing there on that curb with my broken key still clutched in my hand, watching a stranger lock the door to my own house, I smiled. Because they had no idea what they'd just done. The house they sold wasn't really mine to lose. It was part of something much bigger, something my daughter knew nothing about. And when she found out the truth, it would destroy everything she thought she'd won. Stay with me, because what happens next will show you exactly how a daughter's greed, a forged signature, and one overlooked document led to a courtroom revelation that left everyone speechless. And I promise you, the ending is worth every single minute. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. 3 weeks before my key broke, I'd stood in this same driveway, saying goodbye to my daughter. "Have an amazing time, Mom," she'd said. "You deserve this." She'd helped me load my suitcases into the trunk, checked that I had my medications, my passport, my camera equipment. She'd even printed out my itinerary and put it in a folder. Jennifer had always been organized like that, thoughtful, or so I believed. My husband Richard had died 2 years earlier. Pancreatic cancer, 42 years of marriage, gone in 8 months. We'd watched him fade slowly, then all at once. Jennifer had been there through it all, holding her father's hand, helping me navigate the medical decisions, the hospice care, the funeral arrangements. This Alaska trip was supposed to be our retirement dream. Richard and I had planned it for years. We'd saved, made lists of all the places we'd see, the wildlife we'd photograph, the salmon we'd catch. But cancer doesn't care about your plans, so I was finally taking it alone. 21 days of wilderness, fishing, and trying to remember how to feel something other than grief. Jennifer had insisted I go. "Mom, Dad would want you to do this," she'd said. "Don't let his dream die with him." It had taken me months to agree. Months to convince myself it was okay to leave. To be happy, to live. Jennifer had also insisted on having my power of attorney, just in case of emergency, she'd said. "What if something happens while you're in the middle of nowhere, Mom? What if you can't make decisions?" I'd given her that same power of attorney 3 years earlier when I had my gallbladder surgery. Simple procedure, but she'd wanted to be able to handle things if complications arose. It was supposed to be for medical decisions. Bill payments if I was incapacitated, limited, specific, temporary. She'd been so helpful after Richard died, organizing the estate, managing the bills, sorting through decades of accumulated belongings. I'd been drowning in grief, and she'd thrown me a lifeline. I trusted her completely. She was my only child, Richard's daughter, the little girl I'd taught to braid her hair, whose hand I'd held on her first day of school, who'd cried on my shoulder when her first boyfriend broke her heart. I trusted her with everything. That was my first mistake. As I boarded that plane to Anchorage, I'd felt guilty for leaving, guilty for seeking joy while Richard was gone. But Jennifer had texted me just as we were taking off. "Go live, Mom. Dad's watching. He's proud of you." I'd believed her. I'd believed every word. The Fairmont Scottsdale. My daughter had texted me the reservation confirmation while I sat in the back of a police cruiser. Fairmont Scottsdale, room 347, booked under your name. We'll talk tomorrow. That was it. No apology, no explanation. Just a hotel room, like that somehow made it acceptable. Like providing temporary shelter after stealing my home was an act of kindness. She'd planned this. The reservation had been made 4 days earlier. I checked the confirmation number. 4 days before I even landed back in Phoenix. While I was watching Orca's Breach in Prince William Sound, while I was finally feeling something close to peace for the first time since Richard died, Jennifer was scheduling my homelessness. The officers helped me check in. They were kind about it. Too kind, the way people are when they pity you, when they see you as a victim. The younger one, a woman named Officer Ramirez, had asked if I had family she could call. I'd almost laughed. "Ma'am," I said, "my family is the problem." She'd nodded. Said she understood. Said she'd seen it before. Elder abuse, she called it. Financial exploitation. Those words felt too clinical for what had just happened. Too detached. This wasn't exploitation. This was annihilation. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. The hotel room was nice. Too nice. High-end everything. Egyptian cotton sheets, marble bathroom. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the McDowell Mountains. Jennifer had booked me a suite. Probably cost $300 a night. Generous with my own money, I suppose. I sat on the edge of that king-sized bed, still in my travel clothes, smelling like airports and recycled air, and tried to make sense of what had happened. My daughter had sold my house, forged my name, smiled to my face 3 weeks ago, and destroyed my life behind my back. Instead of sleeping, I went through every document I had in my luggage. I'd brought my document folder, the one Richard used to tease me about. "Barbara, who brings their house deed on vacation," he'd say, shaking his head. "What are you afraid of? That someone's going to steal the house while you're gone?" The memory hit me like a physical blow. That's exactly what had happened. 40 years as a corporate attorney had taught me one unbreakable rule. Always have copies, always have backups. Trust documents, not people. Richard thought it was paranoia. Turns out it was preparation. I spread everything across the hotel desk. The original deed from when I'd purchased the house in 2008, mortgage documents, paid in full as of 2015, insurance policies, property tax records, financial statements, and then I found it. As the sun started coming up over Scottsdale, painting the mountains in shades of orange and pink, I found the document Jennifer had either forgotten about or never knew existed. The Mitchell Family Irrevocable Trust, established April 2008. The year Richard was diagnosed with his first cancer scare, stage 1 prostate cancer. He'd beaten it. Treatment, surgery, clear margins. But it had terrified us both. We'd gone to see an estate attorney immediately after his last treatment. We were in our early 60s then, retirement looming. We'd accumulated assets, the house, investment accounts, Richard's inheritance from his parents, a small rental property in Flagstaff. We wanted to protect everything. Make sure that if the cancer came back, if either of us became incapacitated, our wishes would be honored, our assets would be protected. So we'd established the trust, an irrevocable trust, which meant once assets were transferred into it, they couldn't just be taken out. They were protected, locked down, safe. The house on Desert Willow Drive wasn't my house, not technically. It was a trust asset. I was listed as trustee and primary beneficiary. I lived there. I controlled it. But I couldn't sell it on a whim. There were procedures, requirements, specific legal steps that had to be followed. Any sale required documentation, verification, proof that the trustee was acting in accordance with the trust terms. Jennifer's signature, my forged signature, didn't meet any of those requirements, which meant the sale wasn't just unethical. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was federal fraud, wire fraud, since money had crossed state lines, forgery, identity theft, elder financial abuse. My daughter hadn't just betrayed me. She'd committed multiple felonies, each one carrying prison time. I sat there in that hotel room, watching the sun rise, holding that trust document, and something shifted inside me. The grief was still there. The shock, the heartbreak, But underneath it all, something colder emerged. Clarity. I'd spent 40 years navigating corporate law, contract disputes, mergers and acquisitions, forensic accounting. I knew exactly what to do. I knew exactly how this worked. And I knew exactly what Jennifer had just done to herself. She hadn't just stolen my house. She'd handed me every piece of evidence I needed to destroy her. I made the first call at exactly 6:47 in the morning. Harrison Webb had been my colleague for 30 years before we both retired. We'd worked together on some of the most complex corporate fraud cases in Arizona. He was meticulous, ruthless when he needed to be, and he owed me a favor from a case back in 2012. He answered on the third ring. "Barbara," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "This better be good." "Harrison," I said, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears. Steady, cold, controlled. "I need you to help me send my daughter to prison." Harrison arrived at the hotel by 9 that morning. He'd cleared his entire schedule, brought his laptop, his reading glasses, and the same leather briefcase he'd carried for 20 years. We sat in the hotel restaurant, documents spread between coffee cups and untouched breakfast plates. He read through everything. The trust agreement, the fraudulent sale papers, the text messages from Jennifer. When he finally looked up, his expression was grim. "Barbara, if what you're showing me is accurate, Jennifer is looking at wire fraud, forgery, and elder abuse charges. Are you prepared for that? Are you prepared to see your daughter go to prison?" My hand trembled slightly as I picked up my coffee cup. She called me old woman, Harrison, my own daughter, told me I was homeless, while her husband laughed in the background. There was silence between us. 2 seconds that felt like an eternity. Harrison had known Jennifer since she was a child. He'd been at her college graduation, her wedding. He understood what I was about to do, what it would cost me. He nodded slowly. "I'll make some calls. Don't contact her until we have everything documented. Don't respond to her texts. Don't engage. Let me build the case first. We do this right, or we don't do it at all." Within 6 hours, I had a team. Harrison worked his contacts like a conductor leading an orchestra. First call went to Dr. Patricia Chen, forensic document examiner. She testified in over 200 federal cases. Handwriting analysis, signature verification, document authentication. If Jennifer had forged my signature, Patricia would prove it beyond any doubt. Second call went to Detective Sarah Martinez with the Phoenix Police Department Financial Crimes Unit. Harrison had worked with her on 3 major embezzlement cases. She was thorough, professional, and she didn't let family connections cloud her judgment. Elder abuse was her specialty. By 2 that afternoon, Dr. Chen was examining the sale documents the county recorder had on file. Harrison had gotten them released through a legal request, claiming potential fraud. Patricia set up in Harrison's office, her equipment spread across the conference table. Magnifying lenses, spectral analysis tools, digital microscopes. She photographed every page, every signature, every notation. I watched her work with the kind of focus surgeons have. Methodical, precise, uncompromising. By 4 p.m., she'd found the first discrepancy. She called Harrison and me into the conference room, her finger pointing to a signature under magnification. "This wasn't written," she said. "This was traced." Dr. Chen pulled up 2 signatures side by side on her computer screen. Both supposedly mine, both allegedly signed by my hand. "The human hand has distinctive patterns," she explained. "Pressure points where you naturally press harder. Hesitation marks where you pause. Flow characteristics that are as unique as fingerprints. These 2 signatures were written by 2 different people." She zoomed in on the signature from the fraudulent sale documents. "See this," she said, tracing her finger along the screen. "The pressure variation here indicates someone drawing a signature, not writing it naturally. They're being careful, deliberate, copying something rather than executing a familiar motion." Then she pointed to something else. "This loop on the B. Barbara, you're right-handed, correct?" I nodded. She highlighted the initial letter of my first name. "This loop shows left-handed execution. The angle is wrong. The stroke direction is reversed. Whoever signed this was left-handed." The realization hit me before she even finished explaining. Jennifer had broken her right arm when she was 7 years old. Summer of 1000, 989. She'd been riding her bike down our street, showing off for the neighborhood kids, no hands on the handlebars. She'd hit a pothole and gone flying over the front wheel. Compound fracture, 2 surgeries, 3 months in a cast. She'd been right-handed before that. But the break was severe enough that even after it healed, she never regained full strength or dexterity. So she'd adapted, taught herself to write with her left hand. I'd sat with her every evening that fall, helping her practice her letters, holding her small left hand in mine, guiding the pencil across lined paper, A, B, C, over and over, until the shaky letters became smooth, until writing left-handed became natural. She'd been so determined, so brave. Richard used to say Jennifer could overcome anything if she set her mind to it. And now that memory, that intimate mother-daughter moment, was evidence that would put her in prison. Dr. Chen continued her analysis. Jennifer had apparently used a signature stamp I'd given her years ago. I'd had several made when I was still practicing law, for routine documents that needed my signature but didn't require me to physically be present. I'd given one to Jennifer when she was helping me manage bills after Richard died. It was supposed to make things easier. She could stamp checks for utility payments, insurance premiums, property taxes, simple administrative tasks. But the stamp only reproduced my signature in its basic form. It didn't include the notary-required additions. The date, the acknowledgement, those elements had to be added manually, by hand, by a left-handed person trying to mimic a right-handed signature. Dr. Chen printed out her analysis. 17 pages of technical documentation, microscopic photography, spectral analysis showing different ink compositions, pressure mapping, stroke direction diagrams. Every page was another nail in Jennifer's coffin. "This is ironclad," Harrison said, reading through the report. "Any jury will understand this. Any judge will accept it. This isn't circumstantial. This is scientific fact. She forged your signature. She knew she was forging it, and she did it anyway." Detective Martinez arrived an hour later to collect the evidence. She bagged everything carefully, documented the chain of custody, had both Dr. Chen and Harrison sign affidavits. Then she looked at me with something like sympathy in her eyes. "Miss Mitchell, I need to ask you directly. Do you want to press charges against your daughter? Do you understand that if we move forward, she will be arrested?" I thought about 7-year-old Jennifer in her cast, crying because she couldn't write her name anymore. I thought about teenage Jennifer bringing me coffee while I worked late on cases. I thought about adult Jennifer holding Richard's hand in the hospice room, whispering, "I love you, Dad," over and over as her father took his last breaths. And then I thought about her voice on the phone, cold, dismissive. "You're homeless now, old woman." "Yes," I said to Detective Martinez. "Yes, I want to press charges. Because the Jennifer who raised me, who I raised, the daughter I knew, she wouldn't have done this. And if she had, she would have owned it, apologized, tried to make it right. This Jennifer, the one who laughed while I lost everything, I didn't know her at all." Jennifer suggested we meet in the hotel lobby the next morning. "To discuss your options," her text said. Options, like I was the one who needed to compromise, like I was the problem that needed solving. She arrived at 10 a.m. wearing a designer handbag I'd never seen before and sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly utilities. She'd brought Michael. My son-in-law had never liked me. The feeling was mutual. He'd been charming when they started dating 5 years ago, worked in real estate development, talked endlessly about opportunities and investments and ground floor deals. I'd smiled and nodded through family dinners while he mansplained market trends to me, a woman who'd spent 40 years in corporate law. What I didn't know then was that Michael had been a gambling addict since college. Sports betting first, then casinos, then private poker games with people who didn't forgive debts or accept excuses. Jennifer had hidden it well. Or maybe I'd been too wrapped up in Richard's illness to notice. Either way, by the time I found out, they were already married, already drowning, already looking at my assets like a life raft. They sat down across from me in the lobby. Harrison sat beside me, his briefcase on his lap, his expression unreadable. "Professional." "Mom," Jennifer said, and her tone was patient, condescending, like she was explaining something simple to someone slow. "You're being dramatic. The house sold for $380,000. I'll make sure you get a portion of that. A portion of my own house, I said. My voice was quiet, steady. Jennifer sighed. It's done. The buyers have moved in. You can't undo it. I have power of attorney, so technically, legally, I had the right to make financial decisions on your behalf. Harrison interrupted her, his voice calm but sharp. Had, past tense, and only for specific purposes, none of which included selling trust property. Jennifer's eyes shifted to Harrison. Who are you? Harrison Webb, he said. Miss Mitchell's attorney. And we'll be filing criminal charges this afternoon unless you reverse the sale within 24 hours. Michael leaned forward, his confidence faltering just slightly. You can't do that. The sale is legal. We had documentation, proper notarization, everything filed correctly with the county. Harrison opened his briefcase and pulled out Dr. Chen's report. Forged documentation, he said, forensically confirmed this morning. Jennifer's face drained of color. I watched her hands start to shake. For a moment, just a moment, I saw fear in her eyes. Why, Jennifer? I asked. My voice broke slightly. Just tell me why. She looked at me, and for half a second I saw something like guilt flash across her face. Then it hardened. Michael needed help. He's my husband. You were gone for 3 weeks, Mom. The house was just sitting there. We were desperate. Michael cut her off. We don't owe her explanations. Come on. He pulled her up by the arm, already turning toward the exit. Jennifer looked back over her shoulder. Do what you have to do, Mom. We'll see you in court. I'd given her a chance. One chance to make it right. To apologize, to try to reverse the damage, to show even a shred of remorse. She chose wrong. Harrison pulled out his phone before they'd even made it to the parking lot. Detective Martinez answered on the first ring. It's time, Harrison said. File the charges. Detective Martinez subpoenaed the financial records within 48 hours. Elder financial abuse is one of the fastest growing crimes in America, she told me when we met at her office. Family members with access exploit trust. Most victims never report it. They're too ashamed, or they don't want their children prosecuted. They'd rather lose everything than see their son or daughter in handcuffs. I understood that impulse. Part of me still wanted to protect Jennifer, even after everything. But a larger part of me wanted justice, wanted accountability, wanted her to face consequences for what she'd done. The bank records told a story Jennifer probably thought would stay hidden. The $380,000 from my house sale had gone into Jennifer and Michael's joint account on June 14th, the same day the sale closed. By June 16th, just 2 days later, $215,000 was gone, vanished. $140,000 went to something called Desert Sky Investments, LLC. $45,000 in cash withdrawals from 3 different casinos. Talking Stick Resort, Casino Arizona, and a smaller establishment in Scottsdale. $30,000 wire transfer to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Detective Martinez traced Desert Sky Investments. It didn't exist as a legitimate business. It was a shell company, registered to a man named Anthony Torino. Tony the Hammer, they called him. Known associate of organized gambling operations. Loan sharking, debt collection. The kind of man who didn't send reminder notices when you missed a payment. He sent men with tire irons. Michael hadn't just gambled away money. He'd borrowed from people who break kneecaps when you default. And when they came collecting, he'd used my home, my husband's memory, to pay them back. On the 4th night, Michael made his biggest mistake. It was 3:17 in the morning when the pounding started. Not a knock, pounding. The kind that wakes up neighboring rooms and gets security called. Michael was drunk. I could hear it in his voice before I even opened the door. Barbara, open the door, we need to talk. His words slurred together. Desperate. Angry. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand and pressed record before I touched the doorknob. 40 years of corporate law had taught me to document everything, especially threats. I opened the door. Michael looked like he hadn't slept in days. Disheveled. 3-day stubble. Clothes wrinkled like he'd slept in them. The smell of whiskey hit me from 6 feet away. He pushed past me into the room without waiting for an invitation. You're killing us, old woman, he said. You know what Torino does to people who can't pay? You think security matters? You think lawyers matter? My phone was in my hand, recording every word. Accidents happen, Michael continued. Old women have heart attacks. They fall down stairs. They disappear in parking lots. Is that a threat, Michael? I kept my voice calm, steady. He got closer, his breath toxic. It's a promise. Drop the charges, unfreeze the accounts, or you won't make it to trial. Then he said something that cut deeper than any of the rest. Jennifer wanted to put you in the same nursing home as Richard should have been in. Maybe she was right. Maybe you need someone to make your decisions. My hand tightened on the phone. Richard had died at home, in our bed, surrounded by love and dignity, exactly as he'd wanted. The idea that Jennifer had discussed institutionalizing her own father made my blood run cold. Get out, I said. Michael laughed. Or what? Get out. Something in my voice must have finally registered. He stumbled backward, shocked at the steel he heard. I walked to the door and opened it. He left without another word. Hotel security arrived 3 minutes later. I'd called them the moment he was gone. I gave them the recording. They gave it to Detective Martinez. Michael had just added witness intimidation and terroristic threats to his growing list of charges. But he wasn't done destroying himself. Not even close. Harrison filed for an emergency asset freeze 48 hours later. The hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. The judge was Margaret Stinson, a stern woman in her 50s who'd built her career prosecuting white-collar crime. Harrison stood before her, presenting the evidence methodically. Your Honor, the defendants have liquidated $215,000 of the fraudulently obtained funds in under a week. Without immediate intervention, the victim will be unable to recover any damages. We're asking for a complete freeze of all accounts and assets pending criminal investigation. Jennifer sat at the defendant's table with a public defender. She couldn't afford her own attorney now, not after spending so much so fast. The public defender was young, maybe 26, overwhelmed and underprepared. Miss Carter, Judge Stinson said, do you have any objection to a temporary freeze while this is investigated? The public defender stood shakily. Your Honor, my client has bills, a mortgage, basic living expenses. The judge didn't hesitate. Paid for with allegedly stolen money. Freeze granted. All accounts, all assets, pending investigation. The gavel came down. In one moment, Jennifer went from spending my money to having nothing. Their credit cards stopped working that afternoon. Their bank accounts became inaccessible. The BMW Michael drove, bought 3 days after my house sold, was repossessed within the week. I heard from a neighbor that the repo truck came at 6 in the morning. Jennifer came running out in her bathrobe, screaming at the driver. The neighbors watched from their windows. And the house they lived in, the one they'd bought 5 years ago, the one I'd co-signed for because, Mom, we just need help with the down payment, went into foreclosure within 30 days. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd stolen my home to save theirs, and lost both. The trial began on October 3rd, 4 months after I'd stood on my own porch with a broken key. 4 months of depositions, evidence gathering, sleepless nights, and watching my daughter's life unravel from a distance. The courthouse was in downtown Phoenix, all marble and glass and American flags hanging motionless in the still desert air. I walked through those doors feeling like I was attending a funeral. In a way, I suppose I was. The death of the relationship I'd thought I had with my daughter, the death of the family Richard and I had built. Jennifer wore a borrowed suit 2 sizes too large. It hung on her frame like she was a child playing dress-up. Her attorney had filed 37 motions trying to dismiss the case. Procedural challenges, jurisdictional arguments, statute of limitations claims, all denied. Michael wasn't there. He'd been arrested 3 weeks earlier, trying to flee to Mexico, caught at a border checkpoint with $43,000 in cash and a fake passport. Separate trial, separate charges, separate cell. I sat in the front row. Harrison insisted I be visible. Let the jury see who she stole from, he said. Let them see the real victim in this. The jury was diverse. 12 faces, several women in their 50s and 60s who reminded me of friends I'd had over the years. They took notes, watched Jennifer carefully, looked at me with what seemed like sympathy. The prosecution laid out everything methodically. The forged signatures, under magnification, Dr. Chen's forensic analysis, the money trail showing how quickly the funds had disappeared. Michael's recorded threats played for the entire courtroom to hear. This wasn't a daughter helping her mother, the prosecutor said. This was calculated, premeditated theft of a vulnerable elder's primary asset. Jennifer's attorney tried her best. She painted Jennifer as a victim, manipulated by an abusive husband, desperate to save her marriage, confused about the scope and limitations of the power of attorney. Jennifer Carter made mistakes, the young public defender said, her voice shaking slightly. Terrible mistakes, but she's not a criminal. She's a daughter who made catastrophically bad choices under pressure from a spouse who exploited her love and loyalty. Jennifer sat there wiping tears, occasionally glancing toward me like she wanted me to confirm the narrative, to nod, to show some sign of agreement. I didn't. Then she took the stand. I'd wondered what she would say, if she'd apologize, if she'd explain, if there was something, anything, that would make this make sense. The prosecutor approached the witness stand where Jennifer sat, her hand still trembling from being sworn in. Miss Carter, when you signed your mother's name to the sale documents, did you believe you had legal authority to do so? Jennifer's voice was barely audible. I thought, Michael said it was fine, that the power of attorney covered it. Did you read the power of attorney document before using it? There was a long pause. Jennifer looked down at her hands. No, she finally whispered. Did you tell your mother you were selling her house? No. Did you plan to tell her when she returned? Jennifer started crying. I don't know. I thought maybe we could fix it before she got back. That Michael would win it back. Win it back? The prosecutor's voice rose slightly. Gambling? You thought your husband would gamble away your mother's house proceeds and then win them back? Jennifer nodded, sobbing. He promised. He said he had a sure thing. Several jury members exchanged glances. One woman in the back row shook her head in visible disgust. The prosecutor pulled out a printed text message. Miss Carter, after the house sold, you texted your mother's phone while she was still in Alaska, unreachable, and said, and I quote, took care of the property situation. Don't worry about it. Do you remember that text? Yes, Jennifer said through tears. You deliberately concealed the sale, didn't you? I was going to tell her. When? The prosecutor pressed. When she found strangers living in her house? Silence. Jennifer couldn't answer. When your mother called you from her own driveway, locked out of her home, what did you say to her? Jennifer was sobbing now, unable to speak. The prosecutor read from the transcript. Stop being dramatic. I sold it. Those were your exact words. And then you hung up on her. Is that correct? Yes, Jennifer managed. That's when she looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since the trial began. Our eyes met across that courtroom, and for a moment I saw my daughter again. Not the thief, not the fraud, the little girl who'd cried when her hamster died, who'd brought me dandelions from the yard and called them flowers, who'd held Richard's hand in the hospital and read to him when he was too weak to hold a book. But I also saw the woman who'd called me old woman, who'd laughed while I lost everything, who'd chosen her gambling addict husband over her own mother. Both versions were true. Both existed in the same person. But only one mattered in this courtroom. Only one was relevant to justice. I held her gaze and didn't look away. I wanted her to see that I wasn't backing down, that tears and memories wouldn't undo what she'd done. The prosecutor had more questions, but the damage was already done. Jennifer had confessed to everything on the stand. Harrison had saved one piece of information. One detail Jennifer didn't know, the detail that would destroy any sympathy she'd managed to build. Your Honor, Harrison said, standing for redirect examination. The defense has characterized this as theft of a single property valued at $380,000. We need to clarify the actual scope of the defendant's actions. The judge nodded. Miss Mitchell, could you please explain the Mitchell family trust structure? I took the stand, my hands steady, my voice calm. My husband and I established an irrevocable trust in 2008. The house on Desert Willow Drive was one of 14 properties held in that trust. I watched Jennifer's face as the words registered. Confusion first, then the beginning of horror. 14 properties, Harrison repeated. Could you elaborate? Commercial real estate in Tempe and Mesa. a rental portfolio in Flagstaff, investment accounts, bonds. The trust also held the real estate my late husband inherited from his parents, a small commercial building, 3 residential rentals, land holdings in northern Arizona. And the current valuation of the complete Mitchell family trust? Harrison asked. I looked directly at Jennifer. As of last month's assessment, $3.2 million. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, murmurs. Someone in the gallery said, "Oh my God," loud enough for everyone to hear. The judge called for order, her gavel striking twice. Jennifer's face went completely white. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her attorney grabbed her arm, probably trying to keep her from collapsing. So, to be clear, Harrison continued, his voice cutting through the chaos, Miss Carter didn't just steal one house. By forging trust documents, she attempted to compromise a $3.2 million estate. The jury members looked stunned. One older woman's expression shifted from sympathy to outrage in seconds. And if her fraud hadn't been discovered, Harrison went on, the entire trust could have been challenged, frozen, or dissolved. It would have affected multiple properties, multiple tenants who rely on those rentals, and charitable donations established in Richard Mitchell's name. My husband's legacy, I said quietly. Everything we built together over 42 years of marriage. Jennifer put it all at risk for $380,000 that she gambled away in 48 hours. Jennifer was sobbing now, her head in her hands. Her attorney tried to comfort her, but the damage was catastrophic. That was the moment Jennifer understood what she'd really done. She hadn't stolen a house. She'd tried to destroy her father's entire legacy. Richard, who'd spent years carefully building that trust, who'd inherited property from his parents and protected it, who'd worked alongside me to create something that would last beyond our lifetimes. The man who'd raised Jennifer with love and patience, who'd sacrificed his own dreams so Jennifer could go to college, who'd held her through heartbreaks and celebrated every achievement. Richard would have given Jennifer anything if she'd just asked, would have helped her, guided her, found a solution that didn't involve fraud. But Jennifer hadn't asked. She'd stolen, and in doing so, she'd betrayed not just me, but her father's memory. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. 6 hours while Jennifer sat in a holding room. 6 hours while I sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, Harrison beside me, neither of us saying much. What was there to say? The evidence was overwhelming, the testimony damning. But she was still my daughter, and part of me hoped against logic that somehow this would end differently. When the bailiff finally came to tell us the jury had reached a verdict, my hands were shaking. All rise. Everyone stood. Jennifer was shaking so badly her attorney had to steady her. The jury foreman was an older woman, maybe 65, a retired teacher according to the jury selection notes. She looked at Jennifer with no sympathy whatsoever. On the count of felony forgery, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, we find the defendant guilty. Jennifer collapsed into her chair. Her attorney caught her before she hit the floor. I felt nothing. No joy, no triumph. Just a deep, bottomless sadness that this was how it ended. Miss Carter, Judge Stinson said, her voice firm. You will be remanded into custody until sentencing. Bailiff. The handcuffs clicked into place. That sound, metal on metal, echoed through the silent courtroom. As they led her out, Jennifer looked back at me one more time. Her face was destroyed, tears streaming. She mouthed the words, "I'm sorry." But some things can't be fixed with apologies. Some betrayals cut too deep for words to heal. Jennifer was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison, restitution of $380,000, plus legal fees and damages, totaling another $67,000. The sentencing hearing was 3 weeks after the verdict. She'd spent that time in county jail, unable to make bail. When they brought her into the courtroom, she looked like a different person. Hollow-eyed, thin, broken. Judge Stinson didn't mince words. Miss Carter, you violated the most sacred trust that exists, that between parent and child. You exploited your mother's vulnerability, her love, her absence. You chose greed over family. This court has no sympathy for elder abuse, regardless of the relationship. Michael got 7 years. His sentencing was in a different courtroom, different judge, but the outcome was similar. His charges included fraud, witness intimidation, and connections to organized crime through Tony Torino. The prosecution had built an extensive case showing his gambling debts, his threats, his complete lack of remorse. He never apologized, not once. Even at sentencing, he blamed everyone but himself. Blamed me for being difficult. Blamed the system for persecuting him. Blamed Jennifer for not handling things better. The judge gave him the maximum sentence allowed. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. "Miss Mitchell, how do you feel about your daughter's sentence?" I stood there, exhausted, feeling every one of my 67 years. "I feel like I lost my daughter twice," I said. "Once to greed, and once to justice, but I'd make the same choice again." The Thompson family, the couple who'd bought my house, had been horrified when they learned the truth. Samuel Thompson called me 2 days after Jennifer's arrest. "Miss Mitchell, we had no idea," he said. The sale looked completely legitimate. Everything was notarized, filed properly with the county. "We're victims in this too." And he was right. They were. They'd bought a house in good faith, paid fair market value, moved their entire lives into it. When we found out what really happened, Samuel told the press later, "We worked with Barbara's attorney to reverse everything. We didn't want to profit from fraud." The sale was voided through a court order. The Thompsons were compensated from Jennifer's frozen assets, every penny they'd paid, plus moving costs and legal fees. 6 months after my key broke in that lock, I stood on my porch again. Harrison handed me a new key. This one didn't break. The door opened smoothly. I stepped inside. Everything was different. The walls were still sage green, not the cream Richard had chosen. The flooring had been changed from carpet to hardwood. It smelled wrong, like someone else's life had been lived here. I walked through the room slowly, touching walls, looking at the changes. The Thompsons had been kind enough to leave some furniture they couldn't take, a couch, a dining table, small mercies. But it was mine again. Legally. Officially. The deed was back in my name, properly this time. I sat in the empty living room as evening light came through the windows. The house felt empty without Richard. It always had, ever since he died. But now it felt haunted by Jennifer too. Every room held memories of both of them. And I wasn't sure I could live with those ghosts. 3 months into her sentence, Jennifer sent me a letter. It arrived on a Tuesday, standard prison envelope, her handwriting on the front, my address slightly shaky like she'd written it multiple times before getting it right. There was a prison stamp in the corner. Federal Correctional Institution, Phoenix. I held that envelope for 2 days before opening it. It sat on my kitchen counter while I made coffee, ate meals, walked past it a dozen times. I almost threw it away unopened. Almost convinced myself I didn't need to read whatever justification or excuse she'd written. But I opened it. "Mom," it began, "I know you'll probably throw this away. I would if I were you, but I need to try. I can't explain what I did. I can't make you understand because I don't understand. Every day I wake up in this place and I can't believe that person was me. The person who forged your name, who sold your home, who laughed while you suffered. Michael is gone. Our marriage is over. I filed for divorce last week, but that's not why I'm writing. I'm writing because I remembered something. When I was 9, I stole $20 from your wallet to buy a toy I wanted. You found out. Do you remember what you said?" I did remember. She'd taken the money to buy a Barbie dream house she'd seen at the store. I'd found the empty wallet, asked her about it, and she'd confessed immediately, crying. I'd knelt down to her level. "Jennifer," I'd said, "stealing doesn't just hurt the person you take from, it hurts you. It makes you someone you're not, someone you won't recognize." "I didn't recognize myself, Mom," the letter continued. "When I said those things to you, when I called you old woman, when I laughed. That wasn't me, but it was. And I have to live with that. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know, Dad would be ashamed of me, and that's worse than any prison. Worse than 4 years locked up. Worse than losing everything. Knowing that Dad, who loved me unconditionally, would be ashamed of what I became. I'm so sorry. For everything. Jennifer." I set the letter down and stared out the window. The Arizona sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Richard had loved sunsets. We'd sit on the back porch together, his hand in mine, watching the day end. I didn't write back. Not then. I didn't know what to say. Didn't know if there were words that could bridge the canyon between us. But I kept the letter, folded it carefully, and put it in my desk drawer. I told myself I didn't know why I was keeping it. But that was a lie. I kept it because some part of me, some small, stubborn part, still hoped my daughter could be redeemed. A year after my key broke, I received Jennifer's first restitution payment, $47.32. From her prison wages, federal inmates make between 12 cents and 40 cents an hour, depending on their job assignment. Jennifer worked in the prison laundry. This check represented months of work. It would take her 67 years to pay back what she stole at that rate. Longer than either of us would likely live. I held that check for a long time, looking at her signature at the bottom. Still left-handed. Still the writing I'd helped her learn. I deposited it anyway. I used the recovered funds to establish something Richard had always wanted. An advocacy center for elder abuse victims. The Richard Mitchell Elder Advocacy Center opened in downtown Phoenix 9 months after the trial ended. Free legal aid for seniors facing financial exploitation. Counseling services, support groups, resources for families in crisis before they reached the point we had. 23 families got help in the first 6 months. 23 people who didn't have to stand on their own porch with a broken key. Richard would have loved that, would have volunteered there himself, knowing him. People ask if I'll forgive Jennifer, if I'll visit her in prison, if we'll ever speak again. I don't know. Some days I think yes. She's still my daughter, Richard's daughter, the little girl in the photos on my mantle. Other days I remember standing on that porch with a broken key, hearing a stranger tell me I don't live in my own home. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's not one choice you make and then it's done. It's 1,000 small choices every day for the rest of your life. I'm not there yet, but maybe someday. Maybe. They say home is where the heart is. But what happens when the people who were supposed to protect your heart are the ones who break it? I got my house back. My assets are secure. Justice was served in a courtroom with 12 jurors and a judge in black robes. But I lost my daughter, and no courtroom can give her back. No verdict can undo that loss. If you're watching this and you have aging parents, call them, visit them, and please don't make them choose between loving you and protecting themselves, because that choice destroys everyone involved. Richard used to say family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who's there when things get hard, who keeps their promises. Jennifer stopped showing up long before she sold my house. I just didn't see it until my key broke in that lock, until a stranger opened my door and I realized the person I'd trusted most in the world had erased me. I see it now, and I'll carry that knowledge for whatever years I have left. If this story touched you, or if you've experienced anything similar, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Share your story. You're not alone in this. And if you found value in what you heard today, please hit that like button and subscribe. We share real stories about real people every week. Stories of justice, redemption, and the complicated truth about family. Drop a comment telling me, could you forgive Jennifer? Or is some betrayal unforgivable? Your answer might surprise you. If you want to see another story of family betrayal and justice, click the video on your screen. And don't forget, we post every week, so turn on those notifications. Thanks for watching. And remember, protect your heart, but also protect your documents. You never know when you'll need them.